Welcome to the Illuminating Bites Top 25. Today we'll be going over 25 of lesser-known mobsters you may not have heard of. While everyone knows about Al Capone and Lucky Luciano, they're just the tip of the cannoli when it comes to mob history. Behind the headlines and Hollywood glamour, there's a cast of characters whose stories are just as fascinating, if not more so. From a guy nicknamed after a garden vegetable to one who couldn't stop laughing after killing someone, these are the real stories of the mob's most intriguing yet lesser-known figures. Get ready, because truth really is stranger than fiction in this world. Ignatio Lupo, the Wolf of Mulberry Street. Lupo operated in New York's Little Italy during the early 1900s. Before his downfall in 1910, he ran a vast criminal empire disguised through his legitimate grocery business. Lupo pioneered the concept of using legitimate businesses as fronts for criminal operations, a practice that would become standard in organized crime. Despite his relative obscurity today, his methods of combining legitimate enterprise with criminal activity created a template that influenced organized crime for decades to come. Gaetano Reina, operating in the Bronx during the 1920s, Gaetano Reina controlled the ice distribution business, a seemingly mundane enterprise that was actually crucial to the era's food preservation. His operation demonstrated how organized crime could infiltrate essential services. Reina's leadership style focused on business efficiency rather than violence, though his peaceful approach ultimately proved insufficient protection in the turbulent world of organized crime. His 1930 assassination marked a significant shift in New York's underworld politics. Michelle Big Mike Miranda, a member of the Genovese crime family, Michelle Miranda operated behind the scenes as a powerful advisor during the 1950s and 1960s. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Miranda advocated for discretion and negotiation over violence. His diplomatic approach to resolving disputes between families earned him respect across multiple crime organizations. Miranda's legacy lies in his ability to maintain power through intelligence rather than intimidation. Giuseppe Clutch Hand Morello, the first officially recognized leader of what would become the Genovese crime family, Giuseppe Morello established himself in New York's Italian community in the 1890s. He was known for his expertise in counterfeiting, his black hand extortions, and the nickname the Clutch Hand due to a severely deformed right hand resembling in an almost claw-like appearance. Morello created one of the first organized crime networks in America, though his name has been overshadowed by his more famous successors. Rosario Papa De Simone. Operating in Los Angeles during the 1920s and 1930s, Rosario De Simone controlled criminal operations in an area not typically associated with Italian organized crime. He established significant influence in California's wine industry during Prohibition, using his connections to maintain a profitable distribution network. His success in a non-traditional territory demonstrated the adaptability of organized crime operations. Frank Don Ciccio Scalise, a founding member of the Gambino family, Frank Scalise operated largely in the background during the 1940s and early 1950s. He specialized in labor racketeering, liquor bootlegging, shakedowns, and union infiltration, developing sophisticated schemes that would influence organized crime's approach to labor manipulation for decades. His methods for controlling unions became a blueprint for future operations. Joseph Joe Ironman Ardizone, Los Angeles' first Italian mafia boss. Joseph Ardizone controlled criminal operations in California during the 1920s. His influence extended into legitimate businesses, particularly the produce industry. Ardizone's ability to maintain control over a territory far from the traditional East Coast power centers demonstrated the nationwide reach of Italian organized crime. Anthony Little Orgi Pisano Carfano. A notable figure in the Luciano crime family, Anthony Carfano managed gambling operations during the 1940s and 1950s. His influence extended into legitimate entertainment businesses, including interests in Miami Beach hotels and nightclubs. Carfano's ability to bridge the worlds of criminal enterprise and legitimate business demonstrated the mob's growing sophistication. This all ended in 1959, when Carfano, along with friend Janice Drake, wife of comedian Alan Drake, were assassinated in Carfano's Cadillac, where a gunman was hiding in the back seat. One theory is that Tony Bender Strollo, a close friend who had dined with the couple that evening, was behind their murders, either carrying them out himself or having his men ambush them. Joseph "Joe Evil Eye" Magliocco, the successor to Joe Profaci in the Profaci crime family, later known as the Colombo family. Joseph Magliocco's brief leadership in the early 1960s marked a crucial transition period. His attempt to maintain traditional mafia values in a changing criminal landscape illustrated the challenges facing organized crime as it entered a new era. Stefano, the Undertaker. Stefano Magaddino controlled criminal operations in Buffalo, New York and parts of Ontario, Canada from the 1920s through the 1960s. His operation demonstrated how organized crime could establish international networks, particularly across the US-Canada border. Magaddino's long-term control of his territory showed how regional bosses could maintain power through careful alliance building. Frank "Funzi" Thierry, the first Genovese family boss to be convicted under the RICO Act, Frank Thierry operated with a surprisingly low profile during the 1970s. His leadership marked a shift toward more sophisticated criminal enterprises, including complex financial fraud schemes. Thierry's downfall demonstrated the changing landscape of law enforcement's approach to organized crime. On March 29, 1981, 2 months after being sentenced to prison, Thierry died of natural causes at the age of 77. Michele the Pope Greco, known as the Pope for his role as a mediator between rival groups, Michele Greco controlled significant territory in Sicily during the 1970s and 1980s. His approach to leadership emphasized diplomatic solutions to conflicts, though he was not afraid to use violence when necessary. Greco's story illustrates the complex relationship between traditional Sicilian mafia values and modern criminal enterprise. Carmine Galante. Though better known in criminal circles than to the public, Carmine Galante controlled significant drug trafficking operations in the 1970s. Upon his release from prison in 1974, Galante allegedly ordered the bombing of the doors to the private mausoleum of his mortal enemy, Frank Costello. It appeared he wanted to make a strong statement. His ambitious expansion plans and brutal leadership style eventually led to his downfall. He was shot dead on a restaurant patio, a cigar still tightly clenched in his teeth as he slowly bled out. Galante's story demonstrates how even powerful mobsters could fall victim to their own ambition. Tony Pro Provenzano, a powerful labor union leader and mobster, Anthony Provenzano controlled significant Teamster operations in New Jersey during the 1960s and 1970s. He was a capo in the Genovese crime faction and was later portrayed by actor Stephen Graham in the film The Irishman. His rise through union ranks while maintaining criminal connections illustrated the mob's deep infiltration of labor organizations. Provenzano died of a heart attack at the Lompoc Federal Penitentiary on December 12, 1988, at the age of 71. Nicholas Jiggs Forlano. After partnering up with a Jewish mathematical genius, Charles Stein, Nicholas Forlano became a prominent loan shark in the Colombo family during the 1960s. Nicholas Forlano developed sophisticated systems for tracking debts and payments. His methods for managing illegal lending operations became a model for other crime families. Forlano's story shows how organized crime developed complex financial operations. Agnello O'Neill Della Croce. Though well known within mob circles, Agnello Della Croce's public profile remained relatively low despite his significant influence in the Gambino family. His adherence to traditional mafia values while adapting to modern criminal enterprises made him a respected figure in organized crime circles. Interestingly, Ralph Salerno, highly decorated New York City Police Department detective and organized crime expert, had encountered many mafia figures during his career, had said only 2 mobsters had truly unsettled him: Agnello Della Croce and Carmine Galante. Salerno was quoted as saying, "They had bad eyes. I mean, they had the eyes of killers. You looked at Della Croce's eyes and you could see how frightening they were. The frigid, cool glare of a stone killer." Yeah, I would agree with that. Della Croce died of cancer on December 2nd, 1985, at the age of 71. Giovanni Johnny Burns Morale. Morale was an obscure player, but an active figure in the Bonanno crime family and was Joe Bonanno's trusted ally during the 1950s and 60s. Morale was acting boss of the Bonanno family from 1962 to 1968. After that, Morale sort of faded into the background and not much was seen of him. Joseph Joe Bananas Bonanno, though his name might be recognized, many details of Joseph Bonanno's influence on organized crime remain lesser known. Born in 1905, Bonanno was the boss of the Bonanno crime family from 1931 to 1968. His attempted expansion of traditional mafia operations into new territories and businesses demonstrated both the ambition and limitations of organized crime's growth. Tommy Three Finger Brown Lucchese. While his name became associated with one of New York's five families, Tommy Lucchese's personal history and operational methods remain relatively unknown to the public. His ability to maintain a low profile while building a powerful criminal organization demonstrated the effectiveness of quiet leadership. Lucchese died of a brain tumor on July 13, 1967, at the age of 67. Vincent the Executioner Mangano, the first boss of what would become the Gambino family. Vincent Mangano's leadership style and organizational methods laid the groundwork for one of the most powerful criminal organizations in American history. Vincent's brother, Philip Mangano, was found dead near Sheepshead Bay on April 19, 1951, the same day his brother Vincent disappeared. Family underboss Albert Anastasio is believed to have ordered their murders in a power grab. Vincent's body was never found and he was declared dead in 1961, though no one was ever charged with Philip's murder or Vincent's disappearance. Louie Tomatoes Marino. A made member of the Chicago outfit, Louie Marino earned his peculiar nickname not from any particular love of Italian cuisine, but from his family's produce business. FBI surveillance logs from the 1980s and 1990s documented his rise through the ranks, eventually becoming a key player in the outfit's gambling operations. In 1997, at the ripe age of 68, Marino was convicted in Operation Games People Play, a massive federal investigation into mob-controlled video gambling. The feds might have finally caught up with him, but not before he spent decades proving that in Chicago, even a guy named after a vegetable could become a serious player in the underworld. Marino died of natural causes on March 7, 2017, at the age of 83. Gerald Scarpelli. A feared hitman for the Chicago outfit, Gerald Scarpelli's story ended in one of organized crime's most dramatic twists. Arrested in 1988 and facing serious charges, he agreed to become a government informant, a decision that sent shockwaves through the Chicago underworld. His cooperation was short-lived, however. On May 2, 1989, Scarpelli was found dead in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago, officially ruled a suicide. It was alleged he hanged himself because a judge ruled against him regarding the Basel tapes. Joseph the German Watts. Despite his nickname suggesting otherwise, Joseph Watts was actually John Gotti's most trusted Irish-American associate in the Gambino crime family. FBI records and court testimonies reveal that Watts earned his reputation as one of the most feared enforcers in New York during the 1980s. He served as Gotti's personal bodyguard and, according to federal prosecutors, handled some of the family's most sensitive tasks. In 1996, he was sentenced to 13 years for racketeering, proving that you didn't need to be Italian to rise high in La Cosa Nostra. You just needed to be effective. Watts was released from prison in 2022. Luis "Ha-Ha" Atanasio Jr., a reputed Bonanno family captain whose nickname came from his distinctive laugh and how he would laugh after he killed someone. Louis Atanasio's career in organized crime was anything but funny for law enforcement. Court records from the early 2000s detail his involvement in multiple rackets, including illegal gambling and loan sharking. His most notable moment came during the infamous Donnie Brasco investigation, where he was one of the few mobsters who suspected something wasn't quite right about the undercover agent. He was later convicted in 2006 for his role in a murder conspiracy, showing that sometimes the last laugh belongs to the feds. Louis was released from prison on May 2, 2017. Frank James Burke, following in the footsteps of his infamous father, immortalized by Robert De Niro in Goodfellas, Frank Burke proved that sometimes the criminal apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Like his father, he became involved with the Lucchese crime family, though he operated in a very different era. Federal indictments from the 1980s detail his involvement in various schemes, including drug trafficking and extortion. Unlike his father's era of spectacular heists, Frank's activities reflected the changing times in organized crime, focusing more on street-level rackets and drug deals. Frank James Burke was murdered in May of 1987. These lesser-known figures played crucial roles in shaping the landscape of organized crime, their methods and operations influencing criminal enterprises for generations. Their stories reveal the complex nature of organized crime's development and its impact on American society. Thank you for watching, and if you want to be alerted each time I upload a new video, please subscribe and hit that bell icon. Stay illuminated with illuminating bites.